and welcome back to Season 5 of the Lighting Your Way podcast. My name is Betty Long, and I am your host during these conversations. I do hope that you enjoy them, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. In this episode, I talk with Colleen Quinn, one of the folks who have guardian nurses as a benefit of their employment. Colleen is a real live superhero. Mom to her 16-year-old son, Paul, who was diagnosed with epilepsy when he was 12, and champion for epilepsy patients everywhere, but most notably in New Jersey. As you'll hear, she is a tireless and fiercely committed advocate, and it was an honor to talk with her. Colleen Quinn, welcome to the Lighting Your Way podcast. Thank you for taking time to be with me.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I look forward to our conversation. You are a passionate advocate, and I love that. But we have a lot of questions to ask you first. So let me tee up. We wanted you to come on the podcast to talk about your advocacy on behalf of your son, whose name is Paul St. Pierre, and Paul, who's now 16, right? 16?
Correct.
Yeah. So he was diagnosed with epilepsy at age 12, and you have worked with your local state legislators to create Paul's Law, which was signed into law in 2020, right? And that authorizes parents or guardians to request the use of an individualized health care plan for students with epilepsy or seizure disorders. So I'm really curious, back then, what motivated you? Like, what was there something that happened in Paul's school that made you say, hey, we can do better?
That's kind of a tough question. I feel like there was several motivators. When he was first diagnosed, I was just doing a lot of research, and his seizures started in one location on his body. Eventually they morphed and did what they referred to as a Jacksonian march down his whole body. But initially, they were short in duration, and they weren't recognized by the school until he began to have them at home. That's when I saw that something was wrong and decided to pursue finding out what was wrong, and then getting the diagnosis of epilepsy. And then even after that, there was instances of him being told to walk to the nurse after he had one. So I just thought, wow, we could do better. And then I had a friend who had done it in Texas, and we knew a woman who, she was working on it in Texas. Her name is Sherry Dudo. And then I knew a woman who had done it in Kentucky, the Lindsey Crunk Act, Cindy Crunk and her daughter Lindsay. So I just figured, here I am in New Jersey.
Well, when you say these gals did this, right? So they're all moms of children who had epilepsy and were petitioning the school or the legislature? Tell me what.
So the Lindsey Crunk Act was done in Kentucky, and it's very similar to Paul's Law. And then my girl, that's a mom and her daughter. Her daughter has epilepsy. And then Sherry Dudo was working on Seizure Safe Schools in Texas. She's a teacher who has epilepsy, and she did it in honor of a young woman, Samantha Watkins, who passed away from epilepsy.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So I guess they were pretty motivating.
Listen, never underestimate the power of a woman, right? And or a mom, even, for that matter. Right? Because that's certainly where it came from. So your journey into learning about epilepsy was because of Paul, right? So, I hear you, the Jacksonian March. You're pretty savvy now, I'm sure, with learning all the medical terms. But what was happening in the school that you felt? So a teacher's asking Paul to go back to the nurse's office after he had a seizure?
So if he had a seizure in the classroom, then they would tell him to walk to the nurse's office. Yeah.
Well, what did they do?
That was the best plan.
No. Okay, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get over to that nurse's station. What were they doing when he was having the seizure?
Well, they didn't recognize the seizure because they were very much they weren't absent seizures, but they presented very much like an absent seizure. So,
Okay.
there's plenty of circumstances, I believe, that are out there, and you're a nurse, you know much more about this than I do, but circumstances out there where kids, I've worked in schools since, I don't know, the 2000, a long time. And there's plenty of scenarios out there where, kids with epilepsy who have absent seizures can look like they're not paying attention and they're daydreaming, and really they're having a seizure. So I think that was part of the issue with Paul as well.
Oh, okay. So once his seizures evolved, right, and it was more of the, the obvious seizure. Did the teachers then change the way they responded to him?
Maybe not so much. Not until I started working on this law.
Atta girl.
I approached the school to do a sort of a test for me and have them take the training and participate in helping me work on the law. So, that was the school that he attended at the time in our hometown. And then I am fortunate enough to work for a very good school district, and my boss was watching everything that we were going through. And she said, let's train all of our aides. So they hopped on as well.
Great.
So
that's great.
We had good support.
So tell me about Paw's Law when it's enacted. I know what it does, right? We describe what it does, but tell me, in a day-to-day type of operations, how does it impact the student?
Well, so I think that, everyone has different protocols for their seizures dictated by their epileptologist. So I think having a specific seizure action plan available for each student that the teachers can click on and know the specifics for each individual student instead of just a general, here's what you do if there's a seizure, is very helpful. And then I think the training given by the Epilepsy Foundation of America and the Epilepsy Alliance of America, we specifically have in the past here used the Epilepsy Services of New Jersey's training as well. And I think that teaching the recognition piece also helps to identify kids earlier because they spend more time at school than they do at home.
Right.
And seizures can be brought on by stress, and kids are more stressed when they're trying to work hard, and so I think that sometimes this could be caught quicker in school, especially the kids who don't have tonic-clonics.
Correct. And I think I remember one of our nurses went out to a school district many years ago about that same thing. This student was having, the teachers were nervous, when he was going to have a seizure. And she explained to them how to help him and how to get him through it safely. Right. Probably before, it was well before Paw's Law.
Right.
So
and I think knowledge is power, right? So people are afraid if they don't know, but once they know and they can be effective until the nurse gets there, then they feel like they know what to do and they can, help protect the person.
Right. Well, and knowledge is power and communication is key, right? So, we see that all the time with patients when we're dealing with them, not necessarily in the schools, but in the hospitals. So communication to have everyone understand what's going on, right? So here's a student, he has epilepsy, right? This is his care plan, which is, kind of cool. I mean, it's like an IEP only for healthcare, right?
Right. Specifically, which is great.
Right. Yeah. So, Colleen,
not to mention,
go ahead.
Not to mention that, look, we're talking about the identified kids. We're not even talking about the kids that aren't identified yet, or the 1 in 10 people that are going to have a seizure once in their lifetime could also be in a school, right? So the training, not just the health care plan or the seizure action plan, but the training to identify some of these types of seizures, I think was also critical.
And do all school districts, is that training kind of common for teachers? So if I'm a teacher in my school, okay, yeah. I like that answer. Good job. I mean, I have friends in Pennsylvania and around the country who are teachers, so I'll have to follow up with them and see, if it's state by state, right? You've been talking
It
about.
is state by state. It is
Yeah.
state by state. And Cindy and Sherry and I have helped pass it, between our states and the states we've helped. I think we're at like 9 states we've helped in. So.
Right. And wasn't there one you were telling me it's most recently in Georgia? Is that the most recent
Georgia, yes. And his
legislature?
name is A.J. Taylor from Georgia. He's a
Okay.
young man who, is just an amazing advocate. He's 28, but he experienced a tough time in high school because of this. So, and he had to directly teach his peers.
So this is the student, or this is a young man who's gone from school but wanted to work to change the school law to make it better. Wow, that's really cool. So what I'm so struck by in any conversation I have with you is your passion, right? And listen, there's a lot of people out there who see things that could be better or maybe should be better and don't do anything about it. So let's turn the light on you. Have you always been somebody who got things done, who, saw injustice and rallied?
I don't really know. I mean, I guess I would have to say no to that. I mean, I'm passionate what I'm passionate about, but I mean, I don't know that, I was always kind of politically active for like the underdog, maybe to an extent, but nothing like of this nature, I guess. Nothing of this nature.
Okay. And how long was it before when you started to rally the troops until the law was passed? So it was passed in 2020 and Paul was diagnosed.
Right. So, yeah, it was crazy fast. So it was a whirlwind. I don't even know that I remember all of it because it was that much of a whirlwind. So he was diagnosed finally. So his first seizure was in November. He was diagnosed in February, not till the end of February. So there was a lot of time there trying to get a diagnosis. And that was a really rough period. And then I guess February went on. We just kind of tried to, do our best and realizing what needed to be fixed. And then we went to our senator in the summer, and he, when the session started in September, he had the bill ready to go. He wrote it, and it went passed and was signed by Governor Murphy in January. So it was fast. It was really
gosh. I wish that Congress would move that fast. Jeez, holy smokes. So, Colleen, I know that Stephanie Hausman, one of our nurses, is working with you. How were we involved in the process early on with Paul?
So I met Stephanie in the most interesting way you could ever meet anyone. I have to laugh about it because she's like one of my favorite people now, but it's just so bizarre. And so, Paul's first doctor's visits were to our pediatrician and ophthalmologist and optomic surgeon, the emergency room at CHOP, like many different, visits trying to figure out what this was. And, no one could see it except for me because it wouldn't happen for anyone other than when,
Right.
So eventually we got the diagnosis, and that was February. We did testing, and then we did a stay at the EMU, and all of a sudden there was a phone call. Somebody's coming up to see you, and then a knock on the door, and it was smiling, sweet Stephanie with a bag of like little healthy snacks. And I was never so happy to see anybody in my life because I was pretty unprepared for the EMU and the fact that you're not supposed to leave the room. So she was truly a guardian angel, and still is to this day with us. So.
Well, I know she's very excited. She keeps us up to date on all the comings and goings of the legislation. So, and I know that there's a new law you're trying to get passed now, right, in New Jersey. Tell us about that.
So that would be seizure safe signs in businesses. So they would be disseminated to employers, and employers would disseminate them in the state of New Jersey. And I think, at their places of employment. And I think that would be good because, ideally, if you remember an acronym, you can know what to do on a most basic level. I mean, ideally, you want to take the training from the Epilepsy Alliance. But not everyone in the world is going to go run out and take the training. Let's be realistic. So the next best thing, and especially in the work sector, would be to have signs. And personally, I like the trust sign. So that's the sign I'm advocating for
Okay.
to be
And
the sign
is that
we're
an
going to use.
acronym? Trust?
It is. It's trust, and it's assigned by Epilepsy Services of New Jersey. And the acronym is for turning the person on their side, removing objects, putting something soft under their head, staying with the person, and timing the seizure.
Great. That's
So,
easy,
pretty
right?
easy
Trust.
to remember.
Yeah,
And,
very easy. Yeah.
Could be extremely helpful, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I work with a bunch of nurses, but not everybody does. So
right.
if you're in, Costco or something, it might be nice to have people who know what to do.
Right.
So
or
I
if someone has a seizure disorder at work and, they're comfortable letting someone know that person, has a sign memorized or there are signs up that people don't even have to know if someone doesn't want to disclose.
Yeah. So where's that at in the legislature now, the safe sign?
So it needs a Senate floor vote, and then it is off to Governor Murphy.
All right.
And
Colleen,
I'm hoping for that to happen in May.
I see some politics in your future, perhaps.
Oh, that's funny. maybe for epilepsy politics, but I don't know about anything else.
Well, listen, you've gotten two things. If this goes through, you've gotten two things done, which is way more than some of our legislators can speak to. So,
thanks. It takes a village. I've had a lot of good help.
Well,
Stephanie included.
Thank you for that, and I'm sure Stephanie appreciates that. I remember, speaking of help, I remember my mom when I was little. Whenever I would get worked up about something, she'd say, "Write a letter," which got me kind of started on my own consumer letter writing campaign. But I was wondering, has Paul been involved in this advocacy?
Oh yeah, from the very beginning.
Okay.
When he was 12, he tried to write his testimony, and of course I helped him with it. But
Right.
he went there himself in his little suit that I got him, and he testified.
That's great.
And he's testified at every hearing that we've had for both bills. Most recently, his epilepsy has been, the first year and a half, we were blessed. We had seizure control, unlike many families. So it was a prime time for us to, start working on Paul's Law because we were in a good place. And unfortunately, since then, we've kind of been struggling. We've had a pretty decent last 6 months, with the exception of one bad incident. But overall, Paul has been as involved as he could be. He struggled at his last testimony. It was pretty sad to see. Is like the memory struggles that come with epilepsy and the struggles to read out loud, and they were so kind to him. Take your time, young man. And he was like, I do this a lot. I should be good at it. And they're like, no, you're good at it. So, he has high expectations for himself for this.
That's great. Well, listen, he's got you as a mom. I can't imagine. That's great. That's great. I'm glad that he's involved, and I'm sure it's wonderful for him to see you so involved and so passionate and so successful at getting things done. Just not just for him, but for other students, which is really cool, right? You're the cool mom.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that because I actually asked his permission.
What do you mean?
So when this first all went down, he was 12, and social media, once it's out there, it's out there. So I sat him down and I said, listen, there was a law in Kentucky, and my friend Terry's working on this law in Texas. What do you think? Do you want to do it? I mean, we could try to do it. And he goes, well, everybody's going to know I have epilepsy. And I'm like, well, you shouldn't be ashamed that you have epilepsy. And he's like, that's true, but I've been bullied. And I'm like, all right, well, it's up to you. And he was thinking. And then I said, is there anything you want to ask me? And he said, yeah. Well, how many people have it? And I said, well, 12,000 kids in the state of New Jersey have it. And he said, well, we have to help all the kids. And that was it. But I did ask his permission.
Oh, I see. Thank you. I tend to block out social media as a impactful force in our society, but you're right. And especially as a kid, right? Because that's all they do is they're on social media. So thank you for the reminder. So tell me about your foundation. You have a foundation called Paul's Purple Warriors. Why was that set up?
I do. And so I guess we wanted to have a big party is kind of how that started when we passed Paul's Law. We wanted to have a big party and raise money to send some kids to camp. Because along the way, we had met a bunch of kids who've never met any other kids with epilepsy. And we thought, oh, well, this isn't right. They need friends that they can talk to about, their disability and, their struggles. So we got to find some camps. So we found some camps. We found a camp in New Jersey run by the Epilepsy Alliance, Epilepsy Services of New Jersey for kids that are pretty impaired, have other difficulties besides epilepsy. So we thought that's a good camp for some kids. And then we found a camp from Epilepsy Foundation of Eastern Pennsylvania. And it's a great camp, and it's for kids that, don't have other medical conditions. It's just strictly epilepsy. So we thought, well, these are two great camps. Let's make some money, celebrate the passing of Paul's Law, and send a bunch of kids to camp. So that's how the foundation started.
And have a great party, right, in the meantime.
And have a great party. Because it was a lot of work. I mean, I said it was fast, but I didn't say it wasn't a lot of work. So.
Good point. Touche. So what is it, a fundraiser every year that you have? How's it work?
So we do lots of little fundraisers throughout the year. We have a website now. We're finally, it took a long time to become a 501c3 because we did it during the pandemic. So that took like a year. So we do a lot of awareness events. We, sadly, we reach out to families who have lost loved ones of epilepsy, and we send a little gift to them, a personalized gift to them, commemorating the loss of their loved one. And then we send kids to camp, and we're going to look to broaden our services also to do things for adults in the epilepsy space. We just have to figure out what that's going to look like.
That's great.
Yeah,
what's the website?
ppwnj.org.
P for Paul, purple for Paul, W for warrior, NJ for New Jersey, .org?
.org.
Okay, so ppwnj.org. Catchy. Good job.
My best friend Colleen does all that stuff. I can take no credit for that.
That's okay. As you said, it takes a village.
It does take a village. She's our financial advisor. She's our website person. She does all that stuff.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to go back to you. And one of the things that a lot of us at Guardian Nurses want to know about you, because you're a single mom and you work full time and you have a 16-year-old, with normal teenage needs plus his medical needs. So what keeps you going?
I don't know. Maybe I'm a little fixated on this at this point because, we were state number 5, and now I'm just like, if we did it, anybody can do it. That's my line. So when I find people on my Facebook page, National Epilepsy Advocates for Seizure Safe Schools, I just say, well, if we did it, you can do it. So do you want to do it or do you not want to do it? And most of the time they say yes. And then we just mentor the state. That's how, it worked in Missouri. That's how I found a lady who ran the Epilepsy Foundation of Louisiana, and she wanted to do it. So we helped her. We helped Ohio a little bit. We helped the guy in Arizona pass it a little bit. Recently, we helped our friend AJ in Georgia. But it's really, what we're doing for them, Cindy, Sherry, and I, is just giving them like the framework. All right, here's what you do. So really, I mean, they're the ones doing the work. We're just like their guidance, or their sounding board, or, so they're doing the work. But it is very exciting to watch other states pass where you kind of have seen the people grow there and walk through the journey with them at a distance. So it's really awesome. It's really awesome.
Well, and Colleen, I think to myself, like, why isn't this already in place? Right? It's 2023, and it's not
You
that,
wonder that,
epilepsy.
and then you have states that have been at this, honest to God, for 3 years and haven't passed it.
Oh my God, it's like a no-brainer, right? Like, I mean, you did the work.
It's a no-brainer, but
right.
Sadly, there's some politics in everything, right? And, sadly, there are some folks in various states that lobby against the training, and that's the reality, unfortunately.
They lobby against the training? Why?
Yes.
Why?
Why? Oh, why? That's a very good question. Why? Because they think that, I guess, teachers don't want to take the training, or they're anti any mandatory training for teachers, or in some states, teachers don't get paid for their trainings. It varies very much state to state what the issue is, but it all goes back to any one of those things that I just named.
Wow. I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, I just think it's, you want to keep people safe, right? That's you're a teacher. You want to, and they're in your classroom, and you're responsible.
And sadly,
I understand.
it's not the teachers. We've had teachers testify in numerous states. We have a teacher who worked on it in Texas. Sherry, I told you that. I work in a school in New Jersey. Our South Carolina girls that are working on the law right now there. One of those ladies is a teacher. It's really the upper echelon of, sadly, the school administration in these states.
Administration.
In these states, yes.
Wow.
Not every state, but some.
Wow. Okay. That's a whole nother podcast. Is the political makeup of. Wow. Okay.
Could be.
All right. So we know what keeps you going. So, but what do you do? I know this is a question you probably get asked. What do you do to take care of you when you're not taking care of Paul and the school, the acts, and all the legislation that you're trying to get passed? What do you do for fun?
I do for fun. Jeez. That's a tough one, because I do, I'm going to be honest, I do work on this a lot.
I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do.
It's a really tough question. What do I like to do that I'm going to try to do more of this summer would probably be a better thing to ask me.
Okay, fair enough.
These legislators go on break in the summer.
So you can go on break too.
Right. So the summers are a little easier, although I do run a surf camp down the shore for 30 kids with epilepsy. So, yeah. But that one's a well-oiled machine. We're on year 3. We do it in conjunction with our partners, Epilepsy Services of New Jersey. So that's on year 3. So that's a pretty well-oiled machine.
Okay.
But I like boating. I don't know. Paul and I like to go crabbing.
Okay.
I like to go out with my girlfriends. I like to get my nails done. He plays golf. I like to play. I taught him, but I'm terrible. So, yeah, I guess that's what I like to do. And I need to do more of that. But the weather hasn't cooperated recently for any of those activities. So I think I'm a summer person, to answer your question.
Well, that's great, because you're working at school, right? So you get a chance to.
It works out, right? I'm a summer person.
Yeah, right. So, Colin, I'm going to switch it back to parents and patients. Really, what as we close this conversation, what would you say to a parent who just learned that their child has epilepsy, given all the things that you've learned over the years?
First, I would ask where they live, because I want to know if they live in a Seizure Safe School state.
Okay,
that would be my first question.
Okay.
And assuming that they did, my next question would be, are you seeing an epileptologist instead of, your family practitioner or a neurologist? You should see an epileptologist.
And tell us the distinction. How do you find an epileptologist?
Well, how do you find an epileptologist? I would just look for a level 4 epilepsy center in your state that's closest to your house.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, because I think neurologists are not all the same, right? And you want someone who focuses on
and they
seizure.
treat a variety of disorders of the brain. So, I mean, it makes sense to go to the person who specializes in your
Right.
specific brain disorder.
Amen.
So that's why I always recommend seeing an epileptologist.
Okay, great. So check the state. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
2, right? Check don't go to your primary care doctor for treatment. Anything else?
Right. See an epileptologist. Find one and see one.
Okay. And then anything about, kind of websites or, maybe drug websites or informational websites that would be helpful for folks? What are some of your favorites?
I like Living Well with Epilepsy. I think there's a lot of good articles on there. It's my friend Jessica.
Mm-hmm.
She does a really nice job. She's been in the epilepsy space for years, way before we even knew much about epilepsy. I think she's great. I think the Epilepsy Alliance of New Jersey does a great job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
and join a parent support group, or have your kids get some counseling, or join a support group, because it's a tough diagnosis, especially on a teen.
Yeah, I can't imagine, right? Because all the awkwardness of being a teenager, right? And now with enhanced by social media, and then now you have a seizure disorder, which separates you from, the quote normal kids, right?
And it can happen at any time, and you're embarrassed, which God forbid you shouldn't be, but these kids are. So.
Yeah, I mean, right? We can both remember when we were teenagers, and teenagers are not kind.
No, it's a tough time period.
Yeah. Colleen, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I so thank you for the work that you're doing on behalf of all the patients. Right? I'm so really I love what you're doing, and I certainly hope that we will continue to stay in touch and help you through this as Paul grows.
I would appreciate that very much. You guys have been instrumental. Stephanie has testified for us at hearings on behalf of these bills, and they're good bills. And, we're making a difference in New Jersey. And I've been lucky enough to find great advocates in, Missouri, Arizona, Virginia, and Georgia, and work with Sherry and Cindy in Kentucky, and feel like we're making a real difference around here. So
it's great. Well, it's Paul's Paul's Purple Warriors, right? So congratulations again on all the success you've had, and thank you. I know it comes from the heart. So congratulations and thanks again.
Thanks, and I appreciate you very much and your organization. Like I said, she made my day that day, and she hasn't left my side ever since. If I have medication questions, she helps get me answers. If I, don't understand something a doctor sends me in a message, she helps me with that. She helps me figure out what could be what side effects of what medicine, like, well, this one, look at this, it does this. She's just been very instrumental in this journey, and I can't say enough great things about you guys.
Well, thank you. We are happy to be part of your team.
Oh, and we're happy to have you. You have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for joining me.
Bye-bye.
I appreciate it. Bye-bye. If you have any questions that you would like us to address in a future episode, please email us at podcast@guardiannurses.com. That email again is podcast@guardiannurses.com. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us this week. You can find the Lighting Your Way podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google, YouTube, Spotify, and Stitcher. If you liked what you heard, tell a friend and leave us a review. You can learn all about Guardian Nurses Healthcare Advocates on our website, guardiannurses.com. So until next time, find some joy in your life, pet all the good doggies and kitties, and remember to tell your people that you love them. Take care.